Okay, so the last and certainly not the least of our workshops, I think you're going to sense a really interesting pattern here that's emerging across the people that we've been treated to today. If Jane Barrett was our internationalist and Saul Kaplan our multifaceted innovator, both the technology and business model innovator, we would refer to Laurie Orlov, again, to bring it down to one word, an integrator. She is very impressive in her ability to fuse a number of dimensions of her career and the experiences that she's had into a new practice with Aging in Place Technology Watch as a principal of her new firm that she launched a few years ago after 9 years with the Forrester organization, was a top-ranked global analyst with Forrester. And having done a fair amount of work with Forrester for well over a decade now, and I've been to their offices in Boston, I've seen the way they work. It's a pressure cooker. To be at Forrester for 9 years, let alone one of their top analysts, is an achievement. What I like about Laurie is she brings the sort of market analyst side of the equation along with her recent education in geriatric care. She's been certified in that area, and I think she'll talk to some of her experiences as an ombudsman in Florida right now in that area. But also I think at the core, Laurie has been a nerd for quite some time on the tech side. She's a techie, and you can tell when you talk to her, you really can't fool her all that much on standards and various other things that she, through that lens as a Forrester analyst, has been able to evaluate. So what I think she brings to the table that's very powerful is she's showing companies today, corporations in America and abroad, how to bring solutions for this aging market. And the whole notion of aging in place is a growing business that she has been so big in. And we're very lucky to have her because, like Saul and Jane, she travels to an insane number of places, and she seems to be speaking at a conference almost every 3 or 4 days somewhere in the world. So we're very lucky that the planets aligned today, and we were able to bring Laurie Orlov to Mars. So let's hear Laurie now and learn about aging in place. Thanks, Laurie.
I feel very lucky to have made it to Mars. A lot of places I wanted to go in life, but this is definitely one of them. I actually lived in Toronto for 5 months in my 20s, right out of college, and so it's been great to come back here and look around the city, and it even has a couple of the same restaurants I used to go to. I lived on Spadina Road and Bloor. In what turned out, I was so silly and naive in my 20s. I rented this place, and it was my neighbor down the hall from me who explained to me that we were on the 3rd floor of a house of ill repute. And I was wondering why the furniture was black and the carpeting was red, and what was actually going on with these ladies leaving the 1st floor at all hours of the night. So I was a silly person. Like many people who enter the business of aging today, and many that I meet at conferences I go to, many of us have a story that is related to our own experience with someone aging, and that's really why we got into this field. So this is really a little bit about my mother. My mother passed away in 2006. She had suffered from 8 years of decline with Alzheimer's, one of the things that, one of the studies I read, it's an AARP study called Healthy at Home, and if you haven't read it, it's actually very engaging material to use as a basis for thinking about the whole problem and opportunity in aging. But the attributes of successful aging were ranked by seniors in the study. And the 3 attributes that they ranked at the top of successful aging were the ability to do things for myself, to feel safe, and to have good health. And this is the reason my consciousness actually got raised, is because my mother's own experience was that she was not able to do things for herself. She did not feel safe. She did not have good health. She spent time in 1 assisted living facility, 2 different nursing homes, and really had 9 lives in terms of the illnesses that she went through. And so when I moved to Florida in 2006, I volunteered as an ombudsman for nursing homes and assisted living facilities, and I enrolled myself in the geriatric care management program at the University of Florida, which was an online program graduate program. And one day I did a project, this was the summer after I left Forrester, I did a project for them that involved a bibliography about technologies for aging in your own home. And I actually read a presentation by Joseph Coughlin at MIT's Age Lab that was entitled Cathedral Builders Wanted. And if you have a chance to ever find that presentation, which is available on the internet, Cathedral Builders Wanted instead of cottage builders. And what his point was is that we need cathedral builders and a vision for what is the world of aging for us and for our parents. So that was an epiphany for me. I decided right at that point that there was probably only one person floating around who had both the 24 years in IT, the 9 years at Forrester as an industry analyst. I was interested in the topic of aging. I had self-published a book about elder care after my own experience with my mother. There's nobody else who's going to be the industry analyst for this emerging market of technology for aging. So I said, I have to do it. And I began blogging. Actually, this was in September 2008. I began writing my blog, and I launched the company actually not a couple years ago, but actually a couple months ago in March of 2009. And began accepting clients, advisory clients. I published a market overview, which is on my website. We'll get to that at the end of this slide deck. On my website, downloadable for free, about the market for technology for aging in place, and that's really what I'm going to talk about today. I do believe there's an enormous business opportunity, and I'll get to that. So with that being said, I'm going to spend very little time on the problem. The problem is, as we know, there are millions of seniors who live alone. There's an enormous percentage of people who care for someone outside the home. 79% of care recipients are over the age of 50. I do want to offer up one statistic about Alzheimer's that actually I find this is another galvanizing or catalyst statistic to think about. In the United States right now, there's actually 5.2 million people suffering from Alzheimer's. And if you add the nursing home and assisted living units together, that's 3 million in the US. So I have a feeling the statistic is really quite similar around the world, is that there's not enough units of housing dedicated to serving the people who actually have dementia. And while I believe the aging situation does cover all of us from the age of 3, we are in fact aging, from age of 0, but I worry most about the people who are at the oldest end of that. So this is another graphic about a gap problem we have, and that has to do with the rise in the population of women aged 25 to 44. As you can see, that curve is really not rising particularly fast. The price of assisted living is in fact doubling, and the population of seniors is growing. So if we frame that as sort of the backdrop of what we're going to be talking about. So one of the things that we have to think about is we are not all in that multi-decade age range. Let's start for a moment at the age of 65 and think how many decades of living that potentially encompasses. We might want to think of ourselves as starting out very independent in that cycle, and maybe based on age we become more frail, or in fact we become more frail because of chronic disease and conditions. So the very minimal level of thinking about support from technology is in the home, and I point out that if you don't have an alarm system in the home, you might as well forget about the rest of technology for aging in place. It's actually not going to help you much because you are at risk of fire, flood, burglaries, and all kinds of things like that. So the second level of technology we're interested in as we move potentially from independent to frail, which may in fact not entirely be based on age, as I said, maybe on chronic disease, is we want to stay connected to other people. And so a way of thinking that is we want to know what the status is of the people that in fact we care about. And the people we care about are not necessarily in the city in which we are. Okay, they may be someplace else. And so that's where technologies like email and phone and video phone and video calling may be useful. The third level of moving from independent to frail certainly is we have to start worrying about our personal safety. And so technologies there that we think about in the context of that might be personal emergency response systems and home monitoring capabilities. The fourth area is we know that 50% of all people over the age of 65 have at least one, if not two, chronic diseases. And so we want to be reminded to take our medications. We want to have wellness guides that help us, in fact, stay physically fit or even think about physical fitness. And we want to make sure our personal health is, in fact, maintained for as long as possible. And in the last status, when we really are clearly suffering from chronic disease, we really want to make sure that our medical status is monitored, and that's where telehealth capabilities come in. So the reason I lay that out is because there is no one technology for aging in place, and there is no one useful service for that. It really all depends on the status, maybe less about aging and maybe more about frailty. So the argument I make about this emerging market, and by the way, I do believe this is an emerging market, and if you want an equivalent market to think about as you think about what I'm going to tell you, think about e-commerce in 1999. Okay? Does anybody remember buying things on the internet in 1999 and what you had to do that? And do you remember the technology vendors that maybe existed in 1999 and how they in fact emerged and merged and disappeared, and they had technologies that did not integrate with other technologies? So that's the kind of market we're talking about. And so the reason I describe this as a series of dotted lines is because in fact the participants that are going to help us age in place, in any place, are the connections that link seniors with the providers that care for them and with their family and caregivers. And today, there's really not a lot of tight linkage across those various groups. There are spotty examples of it, and I'll probably mention a few of those as we move on. There's some emerging technologies that actually are supportive of it. But I was at a conference last week in which one of the persons I spoke with cited the fact that if you added every technology that was showcased at that event, and that was, there were 450 vendors at that event, and there's tons of technologies out there. If you added everything together, you might see a 5% penetration in use of those technologies. So we have a ways to go. And in 2007, Clarity, which makes a hearing amplified phone, did a survey. They're a division of Plantronics. They did a survey of boomers and seniors. These boomers, in fact, had aging parents. And in that survey, what they learned is that 51% of baby boomers think that some technologies might help them in the care of their aging parents. But only 14% of them had actually looked for any. So does this mean that baby boomers are rotten people? Does it mean they hate their parents? No, it does not mean those things. It means that this market of technologies and services is in fact not visible. It has not presented itself in any unified and coherent way to the people who might in fact want to look for technologies that support their aging parents. And as was said earlier today, there's always a better way. I think that's one way to think about the innovation here. There always is a better way. There always is a better technology. And there is a technology that can support the providers, which might not just be doctors. We're talking about geriatric care managers. We're talking about social services workers. We're talking about nurse practitioners. We're talking about people in the world of senior centers and community centers. So those are the providers that are trying to support seniors. And in fact, those providers are all professionals. They've been trained. They know how to do what it is they do, but they in fact have not yet either coordinated with each other to think about, in fact, what technologies would be useful to make them better providers, or they simply are unaware. And the family and caregivers, of course, we know who they are. They are us. So the question is, what is aging in place? And therefore, what is aging in place technology? And I would argue that aging in place is the ability to remain in your home of choice. Now, your home of choice may be an assisted living facility. It may be in a nursing home, how to be more empowered in a nursing home. It may be in your own home. It could be an independent living. I think the key thing here is that it's the home of choice. And so technology for aging in place is technology that acts as an enabler, not a solution, but an enabler to helping people age in their own choice location. So that being said, if I can get to the next slide. So in the market overview that I've done about this market category, which is technology for aging in place, that market is divided into 4 market segments. And the reason they're represented as interlocking puzzle pieces is because I will make the argument that all 4 of those segments are required, not optional. One must fulfill all 4 segments in order to age successfully. The top left hand is communication and engagement. That's how we stay connected to other people, to our family members, to our providers. And while the category of communication and engagement, in fact, is constant, the technologies that exist today include technologies like email, video phones, cell phones, PCs, software for PCs. If you look to the right, you've got home safety and security. We're always going to need to have safe places to live. Technologies that are available today to us include technologies like security technologies, personal emergency response, and home monitoring, as I said. The bottom left is all the technologies that are going to keep us well and help us manage chronic diseases should we acquire any. So that includes telehealth technologies, that includes medication dispensing and reminders, a very important market that I think is actually very immature in terms of what it's offering today. Disease management technologies and fitness technologies, and that's where you've got sort of the market denier, Nintendo, that doesn't actually admit it's in the aging in place technology market, but you're going to find the Wii Fit in every assisted living facility in the world shortly. And on the right, you've got learning and contribution, and this is really important that this 4th category be included as you think about the technologies that are important to help us age. And that's how we can stay contributing to society. That's how we can stay learning new things and keep our minds engaged. That's how we can leave a legacy to our children. And increasingly, that is going to be how we're going to work. Because, in fact, the idea of a retirement age is going to go away the way of the dinosaur, in my view. We're going to forget about the fact that there's a specific retirement age. It's only going to be a few years from now. We're all going to want to work at something, even a little. There are studies out there that you can look at today. There's one posted on my website that indicates that actually the health of people who work even a little, part-time, occasionally, is better than the health of seniors who, in fact, who don't work. So I think it's an important thought to keep in mind. According to the AARP survey that I quoted earlier on, Healthy at Home, 66% of those people surveyed said they wanted to stay involved with other people, and 57% admitted that they actually really would like to learn new things. I would argue they all need to learn new things, even though 57% admitted that they want to learn new things. So the rest of them, you're going to just have to force them to learn new things because they don't necessarily want to. And 66% wanting to stay involved with other people. The rest of them, you're just going to have to pull them in and invite them to participate. One of the vendors I interviewed when I did this market overview gave me a quote that actually I really love, and he refuses to let me cite his name, so I won't. What he said was, before the tech revolution, the village took care of you. Now we will have an electronic village. And I think that is so true. It's particularly true in Florida, where I live, where there's nobody, the adult children aren't there working. The adult children are someplace else. Only the seniors are in Florida, because there's no economy in Florida. You can't move to Florida and get a good job. So by definition, the siblings who might care about mom who likes Florida aren't in Florida. So it's very important to think about this electronic village that is going to help those people who want to be in Florida stay in Florida. I'm not saying Florida's the best place to be. I just happen to be living there now, but it's not necessarily the best place to be. But I really worry about those people in Florida because their relatives are nowhere near them. And who's going to help them? So I go back to this AARP study because it really points out a really nasty problem. So the blue bars are the respondents were in fact aware of the technology being described on the left side, and the red bar are those that admit that they would actually use the technology. So let's pause here and say everybody knows about the button around your neck, the "I've fallen and I can't get up" button. Okay, otherwise known as the Personal Emergency Response System. Not so enthusiastic necessarily about using it, and in fact it has a really nasty success rate. It's really only successful in helping people who've fallen around 20% of the time. The one you have to press. It turns out older people, in fact, either don't like to put it on, forgot to put it on, don't want to press it and bother anybody. So that's a problem. So then you see the awareness level on alarms on doors and windows. You see a willingness to use alarms on doors and windows. Again, I go back to the point is the ultimate aging in place technology is an alarm system, and if there isn't one, you really can just forget about the rest of this. And the electronic pillbox, only 13% were aware that a pillbox could actually wake up and beep at you when it was time to take an already measured out dosage of medication. But if they had one, 40% would be willing to use one. Only 21% thought there were such a thing as sensors that can detect falls, which do exist today. There's wearable on the body, and there's also sensors you can place around the room that know that you've left the bathroom, never arrived at the living room. And internet monitoring with provider communication. You can see very few people were aware of that. So we have an awareness issue. Really, one of the issues with this market that's clearly the case is that all of these technologies are in the process of getting cheaper, easier to use, more widely available. More vendors are entering the market. There's interest in this. This is one of those markets that the demographic is absolutely irrefutable, right? So if you're a technology vendor, and in fact you've seen a slump in the current technology climate, and you're looking for an opportunity to use the innovation capabilities of your people, this is actually a pretty interesting market to think about. And all of these technologies, starting with activity monitoring and below, really are potentially useful in the context of successful aging, which I'll get to in another second. Now this slide you do not have to read, but I am going to read it to you because I want to make it clear that this is not science fiction. So we have a senior in the middle. She's living at home alone. And in the morning, she passes a doorway motion sensor. She puts on her personal emergency response watch, receives a cell phone medication reminder call. She gets a video call from her grandchildren, goes to a website and requests a transportation pickup. She participates in an online hobby forum, and she attends a distance learning course. She's exhausted by the end of the day because this is an incredible amount of activity. And at the bottom left, what you can see is her family and caregivers are capable of updating a personal health record, preloading a pill canister, setting a medication reminder schedule, configuring a notification list, and receiving home-related alerts. Her grandchildren are capable of making a video call to her, sending her trip photographs, and setting up a family tree. And finally, her healthcare providers, which until last year I thought was really science fiction, but it turns out there's a lot of investment in this area. Her healthcare providers can update a personal health record, write an electronic prescription, check downloaded data from a wearable cardiac monitor, and answer an email question from a senior. All of that technology is in the market right now. This is not the future of technology. So what I see is happening over the next few years is, and you can already see signs of it, which is one of the things about industry analysts. I interrupt myself briefly here to say that one of the things about industry analysts is they don't make up the future. They simply describe it. So when I talk about what the future is going to hold, it's because I've actually already seen things that are indicators of the future. And the other thing about industry analysts is important to think about is that markets that are not described don't exist. So industry analysts don't make up the future, and markets that are not described don't exist. So if you're in a market that is in fact not described, it doesn't exist. So if you look at this view of the future, you can see that the two types of hubs are going to evolve, and they're already evolving. One is a role-based hub. And a role-based hub, depending on your role, let's say you're a caregiver, you might actually go to a website called caring.com, which acquired Gilbert Guide, if anybody doesn't know that. And they've consolidated. Gilbert Guide was a site in which you could actually look for senior housing all over North America. And as is retirementhomes.com, similar. You can look for senior housing and services. And caring.com is a portal for caregivers. And so they acquired Gilbert Guide. Grandparents.com, I didn't know if you know this, but grandparents, it turns out, surface at age 46. So grandparents.com is a website you can go to learn about all the activities you can do with your grandchildren. So in this context of your role, you are going to potentially be presented with products and services that are relevant to that role. You may also have an illness, an unusual disease, a chronic disease, and in that case, you're going to have a need. Your need actually may be more long-lasting than your role. Let's say you have diabetes. You may have diabetes your whole life. You might be interested in the information that you could find on a site called Diabetes Mine. You might be interested in a site called WebMD. These are need-based. That includes devices for how to do rehabilitation at home. You're going to find guidance for how to mitigate the issues associated with those needs, including the needs of your family members. You're going to find guidance. You're going to find devices available to you there. And one of the things that these sites are going to do is they're going to aggregate information from a wide variety of sources, and they're going to present it to you in an aggregated way so that you can search using terminology that has related terminology, and therefore you can find what it is you're looking for. And this is one of the lenses. I believe these are going to be a lens into aging in place related services, and one of the things about aging in place technology is that it in fact is not useful unless you associate it with a service. I'm a big believer that gadgets are worthless in and of themselves. They need to be placed in the context of a process and a service, or a system, actually, as was discussed earlier today. So, to recap the categories, as I said, the categories remain constant, and the technologies around the outside actually are going to change. And all are required. And the reason, I just want to reiterate once more why all are required, because if you become isolated, you stop having your mind engaged, you stop interacting with other people, you have a tendency to become depressed. If you become depressed, you have a tendency to not take your medication. If you don't take your medication, you run the risk of, in fact, some kind of chronic issue that causes you to fall down. If you fall down, you potentially break a hip. If you break a hip, it turns out your survival rate when you get out of the hospital is not very good. So this is why these are all related, and that's the reason for the interlocking puzzle piece paradigm for thinking about technology for aging in place. So more about predicting the future here, predicting a future that is already apparent. Role and need-based hubs are going to emerge and grow. They are going to evolve over time to provide a lens to serving age-related roles in a community. They're going to power a community of shared interests. I mentioned on the previous slide something called Patients Like Me. Patients Like Me is not about common diseases. It's actually a website about uncommon diseases, in fact, rare diseases. And this is a website that people can go to, in fact, learn about the experiences of other people who have the same uncommon disease. Maybe at this point, it would be good to say that there are 62,000 health-related websites on the internet today. That's one point. Second point is, in the 65-plus population, we've gone from 19% having broadband access, that is high-speed access to the internet, in 2008. We've moved to 30% in 2009. So let's think about what's going to happen in 2010. We're going to see another big jump, largely influenced at the lower end of the age demographic, so probably more the 65 to 75 age range than at the 85 to 95 age range. But even so, one reason people need the internet is because the internet has the information that everyone needs in order to be able to cope with what's going on in their lives. And I am a big believer in access for everyone. It's going to serve caregiving families and professionals and span the distance that disconnects the relationships that I showed earlier on. And it's going to build on today's social networks. So we do have Facebook for this, and LinkedIn for that, and Twitter for this other thing. I believe these are very immature in their usage today in terms of connecting people. I think just surfing the internet is almost enough, but I'm using all of these tools, and there's lots of advice out there for marketing your products using social tools. If you set up a Google Alerts for yourself about aging and seniors, you will be drowning in advice, marketing advice that will tell you how to use Twitter. These technologies and websites are going to be simple and intuitive. So if you see a website that is intended to serve a senior audience, and it does not have the font enlarging symbol at the bottom of the website, the one that is the little a, the big A, and the bigger A, if you have a site like that, or if you see a site like that, that is inadequate. You need to be able to make the font on a website enlarged enough so that people who have declining vision, particularly macular degeneration and other diseases that are not necessarily mitigated by getting better glasses, you want to definitely enlarge the print. One of the things that I think is pretty important to understand, this is why I say this market is like 1999 and e-commerce, is because right now many of the monitoring technologies and the useful technologies you might want to have in your home require a gateway box. And the vendors have not all married each other and are not yet sharing the gateway box. So you might have personal emergency response system that connects to a gateway. You might have some other kind of appliance in the home that is useful, but it doesn't relate to the other systems. Over time, we're going to have fewer and fewer of those boxes, including built-in TV and computers, cameras in and around the home, easily switched on and off, and delivered by channels that reach into the home. And clearly, organizations, large telecom providers are very interested in what you might want to do in your home. Cable companies are interested. Cell phone providers are interested. Whether they're actually actively marketing to an aging population, I would say probably not. But they might be marketing to a health-related population, which, as I'll get to, is an overlapping segment. And they're very interested in the demographic that, as I said, cannot be reversed. We're all going to be getting older. It's around the world. Vendors see an opportunity, and at some point, even the biggest vendor will jump in. So what I think is going to happen here is that seniors are going to have access to technologies that are really likely to be subscription-based. We talked earlier about business models in the prior presentation. I believe the business model for serving an aging population is subscription in conjunction with the price of the appliance should it be required. If there is a base unit, pay for the base unit and then charge a subscription. AARP's Healthy at Home study made it quite clear what we're willing to tolerate in terms of subscription prices. We're apparently much more interested in tolerating subscription prices that are below $50 a month than those that are above. And if you think about the fact that you may want today, because we don't have integrated services across a lot of these areas, you may want more than one service. The base monthly subscription price for most technologies that would be sold directly to seniors needs to be quite low. Technologies that actually are sold to caregivers in support of seniors, the price can be somewhat higher, but not much higher. The Healthy at Home survey actually spelled that out as well. So if you look at this screen here, what do we have here? At the top in the center, we have something called ZoomBack. ZoomBack is a wearable technology that actually will track your whereabouts, and it's for people who have dementia and are at risk of wandering. To the right of it, we have a screen from Big Screen Live, which is an ease-of-use software technology. In the middle, we have the Clarity Life C900 cell phone, which is 20 decibels amplified over other cell phones. The bottom right, we have a smart medication device. Actually, this one just launched in the past 6 or 8 months. And this is where the actual cubby, where the pills go, actually blinks and beeps when it's time to take that dose. And at the bottom left, we have PointerWare, which is another ease-of-use software capability. And at the bottom, we have OnTime RX, which is a cell phone-based medication reminding capability, also works on smartphones. So these are all subscription plus base unit, if there is a base unit, technologies. So one of the things to think about here is how are we going to find these technologies? And isn't there a privacy issue here, and don't we need to worry a little bit about that? So we want to have technologies that are discoverable by people through those 62,000 websites I described to you that are health-related. or the portals that I described that are consolidating, or maybe through the organizations that actually are nonprofits that serve seniors. We want to be able to discover those applications where we are and where people hang out who have common interests. So I give the example there of Caring.com and WebMD. We want to have opt-in information. That is, we do not want to default place sensors. This actually happened, by the way, with one product, and the family member sent me an email about this. Their father was in an independent living facility. One day they came in and put sensors around the room, and they launched an implementation of GE QuietCare on all the residents and added a charge into the monthly cost. Okay? There was quite a bit of horror on the part of this individual living in that apartment that, what are these sensors doing here? You know, what's going on? So don't ever do that. You want to have opt-in capabilities, not default in. And that is for any type of monitoring technologies. And a lot of people worry about the fact, oh man, they're going to watch me go to the bathroom, or there's going to be a camera in my home. None of that is in any way, by definition, part of home monitoring. It's all a question of how it gets implemented. And as I said, I believe technologies need to be implemented in conjunction with services, and ideally the channel to which they reach the audience should be people who serve the senior population. So I don't think that there's that many home monitoring technologies, for example, that should be sold direct to consumer. There is one out there. It's called Zambu. Consumers can buy it themselves. If you're very techy and geeky, you can put up your own sensors, set up your gateway, but I don't believe that that's the right way to do it. I believe we're going to have blurred life stages that are going to be available to us, to individuals at every age. And one of the things, I went to a conference last year that was a conference on technology and disability. And one of the things that I learned at that conference was aging people can become disabled. The disabled, in general, at this conference certainly, don't yet know that they're going to be aging. They don't necessarily think that they're in that market. But in fact, in reality, we have blurred life stages. We may become disabled. We may stop being disabled. We may, in fact, be at a young point that happens to us, that we acquire a chronic disease, like diabetes, for example. Or we may be much later in life where that happens. And it's important also to think that applications need to be mobile, and that the information that's in the application can follow us on a technology that we might be carrying around. So a smartphone, a technology that can follow us around from place to place. Just mentioning what you see on this screen, Able Data is a website for assistive technologies, really targeting people with disabilities. Emma is an interesting product. Emma is a dispenser of medications. Some of those medications, like Coumadin, for example, can have their dosages adjusted remotely by the pharmacist or the doctor. I believe we're going to see more of that kind of thing, if in fact the medication makes it feasible to do so. HealthSense is a home monitoring technology that also has a personal emergency response and a mobile nurse cart. But one of the things that HealthSense, it seems to me, distinguishes itself on is it's good at collecting the patterns of behavior that result in the placement of sensors around the home, analyzing those patterns of behavior, and potentially detecting the beginnings of problems. One of those problems, in fact, could be as you pass from room to room that your gait is, in fact, slowing. And in fact, you may be having a mobility issue. So another technology I do want to mention, because it came up earlier today, is there's a product called, I think it's called Spectacast. It's on my website. But one of the things this product does, and I saw this at a show recently, and I got very excited about it. I don't think they have any competitors. They broadcast into senior housing live Philadelphia Orchestra concerts. Okay, so you can sign up for a fee, like $5 or $7, to go to a concert where you live. Okay, that gives you access to this live broadcast of an orchestra, and they also do lectures and smaller chamber music concerts. I haven't seen anything like this in senior housing in general. But imagine the day in senior housing is so often oriented towards the morning and the afternoon activities. But after 6 o'clock or after 6:30, it gets pretty dull in there. And imagine at 8 o'clock you could sit down in an activities room or in your own apartment and actually see an orchestra broadcast. So thought I'd want to tell you about that. So I'm going to zero in a little bit. I know we're running out of energy at the end of the day, so I'm going to go. I'm already going quite quickly here, but I'm going to go quickly through a subcategory around health and wellness, because as we age, we are not necessarily going to be where the doctor is. In fact, in the rural areas in Canada, I was reading some statistics about this. It's quite a nightmare, actually. There are quite a few people that are nowhere near where the doctor is. This is a big issue. We are going to be spending at least $290 billion per year on medication, on issues that result from medication noncompliance. 1 in 10 visits to the hospital is in fact being made as a result of medication noncompliance, and people will admit that many people go to the hospital today for reasons that in fact don't really require going to the hospital. Deloitte did a study a few years ago that said that 80% of consumers want more access to health-related technologies. And so what I have suggested is that healthcare be calibrated to the need. Instead of showing up at an emergency room or a clinic and presenting the fact that you have a sinus infection and having them tell you, oh, a sinus infection, here's the medication for the sinus infection, is it possible to actually have a sinus infection diagnosed by the telephone, by online chat, by email, by a video conference with a doctor who may be in another location? Why does it have to be that you actually show up in person to discover that you really didn't need to be in the emergency room at all? So I'm making the case about what I'm calling calibrated care. Let's just go back for a second and look at that definition. So using technology to determine and deliver the right level of care at the right time and place. Now again, this is not a particularly new idea. There are organizations out there that actually have technologies. There's an organization called Teladocs, for example, where you can pay a subscription fee, like $5 to $15 a month, and you can in fact call a doctor or send an email and get a prescription written for a diagnosis that could in fact be made over the telephone or by email. And doctors will tell you that not all diagnoses can be made by the phone or email, so the first thing that has to happen is an assessment of whether you're appropriate for that kind of care. So I would argue that calibrating care according to the need, based on a little bit of information about you that actually is part of an electronic medical record. I hesitate to say that because that's become such a hot potato, as they say. But this is going to boost access because it's going to enable you to have access to care without traveling to where the doctor is. And your outcomes are, by definition, if you're monitored, if your chronic diseases are monitored, through using self-care devices and transmitted information, your outcomes are going to be far better. You're going to have more control over your life, and you're going to have care alternatives for those who live in rural areas who are too frail to travel. It's too far to travel. The specialist required is, in fact, by definition, not going to be anywhere near where you are. So with that, I'm just going to show you a few statistics about rehospitalizations as a result of the VA telehealth study that was published in 2008. This is also on my website. It's a very interesting study, but what it did was it reduced patient bed days of care in a hospital by 25%, reduced admissions by 19%. It cost $1,600 per year to use the technology. The technology is never identified in the research, by the way, by brand, but it included video phones, messaging, biometric devices, digital cameras, and telehealth monitoring. And one of the things that was so interesting about this study is that the seniors who participated in it really liked the technology. They liked to have telehealth monitoring in their home, and when the technology was taken out, they didn't like that. And they felt someone was watching out for them and made them feel more connected. So I wanted to point that study out because I think it's pretty important. So these are the categories. I'm not going to go into this, but these are the categories that support calibrated care. You know these categories. This is the world of health, telehealth management. Actually, it turns out telehealth vendors themselves are not so happy with the term telehealth, partly because the adoption of telehealth has been less than they hoped, and so you're now going to see lots of people calling it e-health. So we're now in there. But basically what we're talking about is passive monitoring, electronic pillboxes, disease management technologies. I always say that when the going gets tough in a market, simply rename it, and it's a good life. So really, what is the barrier to adoption of these technologies to actually help us with our care? And this is a rather cynical statistic. It was quoted to me by a vendor, but I actually think it's very useful. $1 of money saved in the cost of health care is $1 of income lost to somebody. So look beneath any resistance to adoption of these cost-saving and outcome-improving. I believe that the institutions, in fact, resist because of this problem. So I'm going to leave that topic alone for a second, and I'm going to just spend a few seconds here talking about the world we're in today, which is why this is so much like e-commerce in 1999. We're in a world today where these are really all silos that are separate from each other. And it's unfortunate. They overlap, and they're starting to see the other players, but it's not good enough. So if you look at the bottom left, think about home design. In the world of home design right now, there are certifications for designing homes that are age appropriate or age friendly. Those certifications do not include any mention whatsoever of any technology. So you can get trained, you can get certified, you can lower the counter heights, you can widen the doorways, but you will not be told anything about technology. And when you go into the home, this is the problem with the silos. You go into the home in the context of your particular silo. You're not looking at the issues associated with the other silos. And if you're in the top right hand, you're in what I call the sick care, and I'm not the only one calling it that, it was actually already used today. In the sick care world, the senior is a patient, not a person. And so what's being checked on is the vital signs, the diagnostic information about that patient, not the social connectivity of that senior person, and how they can, in fact, connect to their family members. In the assistive technology world, I've already described that. This is a world of technologies that are supporting people who have disabilities that they're, in fact, coping with. That includes vision, that includes hearing, that includes mobility. This is a world that actually thinks of itself as a market called assistive technologies. And then in the upper left, this is a pretty interesting market, a home automation market, which has been really a market for the well-to-do. Okay, so this is a market of technologies that actually will turn your lights on before you get in the home, turn your lights off, turn your heat on, turn your heat off, start your stereo, manage your TV, do all kinds of interesting things around your home. This is a market that sees the opportunity in technology for seniors. They are starting to recognize it. Then you've got the services world, which is the most important aspect, as I said before, of how to help us as we age. The world of services. That includes security services, which, by the way, see the opportunity in personal emergency response devices and are starting to market them. Transportation services. This is the biggest, I think, gap of services. And it's because we know transportation is very local. I'm hearing from businesses now that are starting up transportation-related services, but what we want to see is a lot more work in this area, transportation-related services that enable people to not just get to the doctor, which a lot of public-related transportation services will pick you up and take you to the doctor. We want to take you to social activities and ways of getting together with other people. So I believe that there's going to be a connection of all of these currently siloed areas, and it's going to come at you through these hubs. The hubs I mentioned are not necessarily the ultimate hubs by any means. There's going to be more hubs emerging, and there's going to be a battle of the hubs. And these will be battles for your attention. And the question of whether your attention is going to be through the television, through the internet, or through some other channel, I don't think that's been finalized. So I talked to you a little bit about what I described as CAPS certification, that's Certified Aging in Place Specialists. It's going to add home wireless and sensor networking. Home automation bundles as a service are going to become a feature for seniors. And actually, I was just briefed about one last week. They've come up with a bundle that can be sold to help people aging in their own homes. Security vendors are going to provide interfaces for healthcare. And remote healthcare monitoring devices are going to recognize the fact that the patient is also a person, and they're going to partner in the security and home monitoring and social connectivity capabilities. So here's an example of a demonstration home, which I believe there should be a demonstration home, and in fact, I believe there are demonstration homes in a number of cities around the world. But demonstration homes are the ways of making these services and technologies more real. If you can walk through a home, this happens to be in California. This is a nonprofit housing organization called Eschaton. This is their senior residence, and what it includes is what I show here: connectivity through TV or home computer, cognitive fitness, and smart lighting and appliances. So demonstration homes, I think, are really important because we need caregivers to be able to walk through a place and see it. We need boomers and seniors and everybody to be able to see it. But most importantly, what we need with demonstration homes is we need videos of those demonstration homes that are then widely accessible to people who can actually see what a home looks like that's enabled for being able to stay longer in your own home. So one question I get asked, and that I actually published in this report, is how big is the market for technology for aging in place? And what I've predicted is that it's a $20 billion market by 2020. And I suggested that today it's around a $2 billion market. And when I say that, usually somebody comes up to me and they say, that's way too small. 20 billion? It's much bigger than that. And it potentially is much bigger than that if you think about this list. And so let's think about this list. If you think about the games and fitness category, you think about TVs, computers, and broadband TVs, which are now in the market. Think about web cameras, smartphones with smart applications, and boy, there's an iPhone application launching every second. Chronic disease management, caregiving, home automation, mobility aids, fall detection, fall prevention, and car safety technology. And then you think about the fact that all of that sits on enabling infrastructure, because it's not very useful unless it is on enabling infrastructure. Then $20 billion does feel a little bit low. So this is the baby boomer in 2020. It's been a typical day. I Skyped the grandkids, I Twittered a new recipe, and I Facebooked my daughter. I don't know, I think that's actually not 2020, that's probably, that's last year. But what I want to do is leave you with a couple of messages, which I'll summarize at this point, and then I would be happy to take any questions or any observations anybody has, and I picked these up really as the day wore on. Technology is an enabler, but it is inadequate without services. Aging in place is not a campus that is age-friendly. One of the really interesting things that has happened in the past 2 years is the term was originally on Wikipedia with a definition that involved moving from independent living to assisted living to a nursing home. If you go to Wikipedia now, you will see that it has actually been modified. Some people who will remain nameless have helped modify it. But that's beside the point whether the definitions had been modified. The concept has already been modified in the marketplace. We don't think of it as a continuing care retirement community anymore. We think of it as what we want to do. We want to age in place, and we want to do that where we want to do it. And we want to age successfully with as much support as we can get. In terms of the universities and public sector, I want to please issue a call to do more of what I saw in that rehab facility, organization today, which was assigning people to get products to market. I have a real problem with university programs that are researching technology for seniors, and they're everywhere. They're around the world. And the PhDs finish the program. They come up with this really interesting GPS trackable shoe sole, like at MIT, that in fact can find you as you walk around, and then they graduate and they move on, and that's the end of that. And there's a lot of that going on. So if you are associated or know of research organizations that are evaluating technologies that would be useful to help us age, there needs to be a unit associated with that organization that helps get the products into the market. Because it's amazing, with all of the work being done on balance, and actually I gave this talk to a group of seniors in Massachusetts last summer, and one of the guys raised his hand and he said, "Why can't my clothes keep me safe?" I said, "True, why can't your clothes keep you safe?" Because people haven't put enough products in the market to think about it. They've researched it. There's a lot of smart clothes floating around in the marketplace, but they're not in the market. And so that's very important. Public sector, university programs, research efforts, partner with someone who will get a product to market. We have a responsibility collectively in this room and wherever else we can encounter people. We have a responsibility to accelerate the pace of both the development of technologies, the adoption of technologies, the understanding of technologies, in conjunction with services, merging these siloed markets together. We have a responsibility to pick up the pace because the fastest growing segment by percentages right now is the 85 plus. Not the largest population segment, the fastest growing. We are not, we're not doing enough, and we've got to do more. The other final point I want to make is that older workers are healthier. So it's important to keep working at something as long as you can. In a world where telephones and the internet are available to us, there is no reason why we can't be doing something for money forever, as I plan to. Thank you very much. Did I take up too much time? No.
Are you okay for
Yeah, I'm okay.
Ms. Orlov would be pleased to take some questions now, and we have about 15 minutes before we're due downstairs for the cocktail reception. So
I know I went really
we go.
fast. I apologize for that,
it was
but
packed with goodness.
yes,
Laurie.
and a lot of caffeine right beforehand.
Questions?
Yes.
I was in Japan in 2001, and we went to the Toyota showroom, where on the floor they had products that, for example, would have a little sort of crane thing in the trunk that might allow a woman to bring her husband's wheelchair into the car so that she could transport him around town. And I was amazed by the fact that these were literally, you could purchase them. You could purchase them in red if you wanted. And we're certainly aware that the age curve in Japan is ahead of the North American one. I'm wondering if there are specific suggestions coming out of Japan that you're taking note of and that you think might be promising for us in the future.
I wish more of it was published in English. I'm a little frustrated by that, quite frankly. I searched the internet, and I actually talked to a guy who's with a company similar to mine in Japan called his company is called the Happy Elder. And I meet him at conferences. He's pretty much at every conference I go to. There's plenty of technology being invented in Japan. To the degree that it's being successfully marketed in Japan, I would be somewhat doubtful. I don't even know that what you're describing, in fact, is still even being marketed by Toyota. Yeah. And if it is, Toyota's a global company, and why don't we know about it? Here in the U.S. Or in Canada. I find that very frustrating. The other thing is that I've talked to other people who actually think about the Japanese market a lot, and they will tell me that it's a little too focused on robotics. And the robotics that they've come up with so far, the form factor is a bit problematic. And right now to get some of these robots, and I just saw another one at a show last week which was wonderful. It's called HAL. One of my blog entries mentions it. It's a robot that can actually be used in a caregiving situation to lift the person into a standing position and then walk with them. So people, in fact, who've been lying in bed or sitting in a wheelchair can be helped to get up and then moved. And people in Japan who were interviewed for this, this is the first time that they've been standing, right? But most importantly, think about caregivers in facilities or at home who have to lift a person. This gives a 100-pound small person 250 pounds of lifting capacity to have this thing. It's $4,000. It exists. It's in Japan. They've made it. I think that's a price point problem. I don't know if a lot of people even know about it in the U.S. It was at the ASA show in Chicago, the American Association of Housing and Services for the Aging. Boy, the fact that I can remember that, what that stands for is amazing. But anyway, I don't see enough coming from Japan with English-based press releases that I can read. And I apologize, but I don't read Japanese, so that's a problem.
Thanks. There's tons of new technology coming out, and just like when I connected my stereo to my TV, I thought it'd be so simple to do. But in fact, as technology progresses, it becomes incredibly complicated to get everything done, and there's a lot of effort that's required to integrate it all together. I'm actually interested with the new technology that comes out. You suggested that the cost needs to go down. I actually don't see that happening to a large extent because there is so much complication surrounding integrating everything together. So I'm wondering, who do you think should be paying for all of this at the end of the day? Because you suggested that the largest leverage is in the healthcare system. That's the largest net savings at the end of the day. But the benefit, or the people who are currently paying for it, are the consumers. The elderly are on potentially a fixed income. So I was wondering who you suggest should be paying for this and how the system should work.
Well, first of all, I want to throw out another number to you, which is that the alternative medicine and health marketplace in the U.S. is $34 billion. So let's compare that to the healthcare industry in the U.S., which is $2.5 trillion. So that's $34 billion paid for out of pocket because acupuncture, chiropractic, alternative medicine, herbal medicines, and what have you, this is not reimbursed by anybody. People feel a need to have one of these capabilities, and they find the money. That's point one. Point two is I don't believe that many of the technologies that are appropriate to help us care for seniors in their home are appropriately paid for by the seniors. In fact, I would say the most useful participant in that would be the adult children, to the degree that they're aware of any technologies, and to what degree are we communicating about those technologies to adult children. This is one of the reasons why a market undescribed is not a market. We need to do more in the way of visibility of what exists. Your point about integration in the home, it is a nightmare. In fact, the remote control for the TV is a nightmare. Okay, and it's a nightmare for seniors. And in fact, even if you wanted to watch a movie in your home, it's not straightforward how you switch from the movie to the TV to watch television programming. In fact, a company just came out, and they're a very weak company that's probably not going to survive. The guy developed the technology for his wife who had Alzheimer's, and it's on my website somewhere. He actually created a dial remote control, a plastic remote control, that the way you changed the channel was by turning a dial. Isn't that cool? Have you seen any other dial remote controls? There aren't any. So I put the blame on this squarely on the part of vendors who make TVs, for example, and want you to buy the TVs. Their lack of imagination and insight as to how the TVs might be used right now is sadly short of the age demographic. I'm disappointed in them. I'm disappointed in large technology vendors. So that's my comment. I agree with you. Anybody else?